Hello and welcome to this week's episode of In Distress, a podcast where I talk about nonsense in the comfort of my childhood bedroom. Sorry, I had to remember what I was doing because I'd be forgetting. I'm not gonna lie, guys. I I don't know what I'm doing with my life. I really don't. I actually This is tragic. I went to a job fair the other day. I was forced to go. Actually, my parents were like, "You should go and do this." And I didn't want to do it. However, at the same time that I didn't want to do it, I also didn't want to like like how like sometimes in life like you'll just do stuff because you don't want it to turn into an argument. It's kind of like how like growing up you would like watch movies or TV shows or something, and like the men in those shows would be like, "Oh, I'm doing blah 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 blah," and then the person would be like, "Why are you doing that? You don't like doing that. Like, why would you be doing something you don't want to do? Like, you're a grown adult." And it turns into a whole conversation about how relationships are about give and take and balance, and sometimes to avoid certain conversations or arguments you just don't do stuff so that you can like you do something so you don't have to go through the motions of that, right? Because you already know what's going to happen and all that. And essentially that's what this was. I didn't want to, and it's not at all something that I want to pursue in my life. Like, I don't really want to do youth development after this. Like, I enjoy kids and stuff, but at the same time, that's not like my goal or passion in life. And I feel like, and this is like super cliche and like such a Gen Z thing to say, but like I am Gen Z, so this makes sense. But it's like, I don't want to do things that I don't want to do. And I've said this before like countless times, but I don't want to do things that I don't want to do. And I don't think that that's a crazy thing to say. However, explaining that to other people is very difficult. And even like explaining like the things that I want to do or like the things that I'm good at is difficult because a lot of people don't take it seriously or think that it's possible and all of these things. And like at a certain point, the same way that I went to that job fair because I didn't want to end up having this whole rant discussion with my parents about how I don't do stuff to help myself because I already knew how that conversation was going to go. I went to avoid the argument that would have been had. And at the same time, I feel like a lot of times the things that I do in my life, I don't say to people or I don't explain to people because I don't want to have those conversations. Like if I go and tell people, "Oh, I want to make music," or "I want to make content on the internet," and that be a thing. I don't want to work for other people. I don't enjoy that. I don't enjoy like the idea of a 9 to 5. I don't enjoy any of that. But it's like that's the societal norm. And so I expect the response that I get from most people when I say that, which is why I don't say it. I don't want to have that conversation. I want to avoid that. It's like kind of like growing up. I grew up like telling people stuff like that, right? And then it's like, you get told, "Well, it's really hard to do that and it's going to take a lot of work and I don't really know if you're able to, and I just want you to." You get told so often what is hard and what isn't possible and what's going to be and what will only happen to like, oh, like one in a million. People act like it's so hard to just support you. And I find that strange one. But also it's like I'm not going to like beg people to see, or like my goal in life is no longer to get other people's acceptance for the things that I want to do in my life. Now it's just, okay, I'm gonna leave it. Like, I'm gonna do, like, my parents told me to go to that job fair. I was at a juvenile detention center. Yes, I was pulled up to the barbed wire. And I was like, what am I doing here? Actually, what am I doing here? And I was like physically feeling like I do not belong here. Not something that I can again tell my parents because they wouldn't understand, because they're like, a job is a job and you have to do what you want to do, and okay, you have to do what you have to do what you. And I'm just very tired of hearing that. Like very tired of hearing that. In order to do the things that I want to do in my life, I have to live in a certain level of like reality, right? But also in like very realistic version of delusion is how I would like to call that. Like, I know exactly what the reality of my situation is. I know exactly how to get out of this situation. Actually doing it in the, I'm not gonna lie, like the 20-35% of luck that I need sprinkled into my life in order for those things to happen are, I need that badly. I need that badly. And it's not just gonna come. I know that. But it's also, again, like, I don't, like, me trying to explain to other people what I need from them is not going to help me get to where I'm trying to go. So I just stopped. I've just stopped at this point. I'm like, I'm just going to do what I do. I'll tell you the results sometimes, and then we're going to keep it pushing. And that's where I'm at right now. Anyways, but this week I didn't really have anything to talk about. So I was kind of like, dang, what am I going to talk about on the podcast? Because I'm going to be really honest, there's not much going on in pop culture, which is typically what I talk about when I'm not talking about my life. So I was like, what am I going to do? And also, I've really been thinking about this podcast, and I say this every week. I've been thinking, and what am I going to do and all of these things, and I just need to stop. I just need to stop thinking. I really am a girl who gets in her own way, and I just need to sit back and shut up sometimes. And that's what we're going to do right now. The first thing I wanted to talk about, this is a pop culture thing, but it's also more of I have like a whole topic involved in this, but I just wanted to come on here and talk about this. So I watched this movie. First of all, actually, I watched two movies the past few days. I watched the Am I Okay movie that just came out on HBO Max with Dakota Johnson. And no shade to that girl or that lady, my bad. No shade to that woman, but I've never watched a project that she's in. Sorry. I've never watched a project that she's in and been like, oh my God, sorry, I dropped something. I'm clumsy as hell. That's my bad. Which is actually crazy because I'm actually not clumsy as hell. I just be dropping stuff sometimes, but actually I have almost cat-like reflexes to the point that I can catch anything falling. Sometimes I'll anticipate the fall before it happens, and that's why sometimes I'm like, I think I'm living in a simulation, but that's a separate topic for another time. Anyways, and then actually I ended up having a conversation with my friend this one time and so I was like, girl, what if this is a simulation and you are like a player in my simulation who's trying to convince me that this isn't a simulation? And then that turned into like a whole thing because actually sometimes when I imagine my life as like analog games, like the games like Game Boy, Atari, games like that you've grown up playing. And so I don't know if that suggests like my mind can like finding a way to conceptualize the way that I'm viewing my life, not in this. I sound insane. I don't know if that's my mind trying to conceptualize the idea that maybe time really isn't linear and that maybe we aren't always experiencing everything in the like way that it happens, right? And that's a whole separate thing, and actually why I believe people should not be doing hard drugs. That's actually something because sometimes I'm like, oh wow, I'm really in the loop. I'm in there. Send help. Yeah. Yeah, that's where I'm at. Anyways, side conversation. I watched that movie and I was like taken aback, really, because the movie felt so real and relatable and realistic and authentic. And I feel like a little bit more recently, it's been really hard to find authentic art. And I don't mean that in like super cliche way, which I say all the time. But yeah, a lot of, because I feel like blockbuster movies and stuff, like movies done that are like huge productions that you see on like ads for on TV all the time. Those kind of movies, they just don't really do it for me anymore. Like they're fun to go to. Like I enjoy, which is actually kind of, I won't say a paradox because I actually struggle using that word in sentences because I understand the meaning of the word, but I don't really know sometimes when to use it in the proper context. But that's a separate conversation about semantics that we're gonna get into in later. And anyways, I was kind of like, I enjoy Dune. Like, I enjoy those movies. I enjoy Dune Part 1, Part 2, whatever. People actually, I've been seeing on TikTok a lot of people talking about Zendaya and how she's not a good actress and how they don't believe her when she's acting. And I actually have to push back on that idea a little bit. I get it, it's opinion. It's an opinion. Like, people have their opinions, whatever. People are gonna go see the movie if Zendaya's in it, regardless. Like, that's not like Zendaya not playing, like, people not believing Zendaya's role isn't necessarily stopping people from going to see a movie she's in. Like, you know what I mean? Anyways, but I enjoy those movies and I think they're fun. I didn't read the book, so I'm not one who can say whether or not she's portraying this character well. At the same time, movie versions of characters are never the same as book versions, which is a whole conversation because I read the Hunger Games of the one with the songbirds and snakes, and I really enjoyed the book, and it took me like a good like year to finish the book because I hadn't like sat down and read a book in so long, and it just took me a minute to really get in there. But I was so like, I have to finish the book before I see the movie or else I'm never finishing this book. And so I like binge read it in like 2-3 days, and it was really great. So much to the point when I went to the movie, I was very underwhelmed. And I was like, I don't know what person would go through the trauma of reading a book and then going to see the movie. Like, because it's just underwhelming. Like, the movie, like, I couldn't even enjoy the movie because I was really sitting there like, they got so many things wrong and there are so many holes that are in the movie that you wouldn't understand unless you read the book. And I'd be forcing my sister to go see the movies with me. So old girl didn't read the book. And then I'm sitting there like, the movie was bad. And then people are like, and then I go on Twitter and people are like, I love the movie. It was so great. Oh my God, it was amazing. Rachel Zegler, blah, blah, blah. And Rachel Zegler, she was cool. She was good. Think she's a talented girl. Hope she gets more roles in Hollywood. But as far as the portrayal of what happened in the movie to the book, like, I was really sitting there like, are people even understanding the plot? Because there are things missing that are important to the story that are like, that's besides the point. Anyways, what was I talking about? What the hell was I talking about, actually? This is what I'm talking. I just be yapping. I'm sure I'll find it at some point. Okay, so I was talking about the books to movies, Dune. So, again, I don't really think that I'm really one to be talking about the portrayal of whether or not she did a great job with the character. At the same time, when I went to see the movies, I enjoyed them. I thought Timothée Chalamet did a great job and has been doing a great job. I thought Zendaya's character was great. When I saw Dune Part 2, I was really excited to go see it, and I was not disappointed. Those movies are definitely not movies that you can just go and like be playing on your phone. Like, it's something that you have to be locked in on, but that's why I like film and really books. Like, I get so tired of being on my phone. But without something else to focus on, it's so easy to just always pick up your phone. And so I really a lot of times use, like, I enjoy movies, yes, but sometimes I need to be immersed in something else so that I'm not immersed in my phone and the internet, because it's actually quite bad. The internet is very dangerous, actually. And like, low key, I understand why adults, like parents and stuff, or like grandparents, are like, those, like, it's because of that phone this, it's because of that phone that. And I really used to be like, girl, it's not the phone, which in a way it's not, but everything leads back to the phone. Like, common stressors in life, like, if I'm not on Instagram scrolling, there's nothing for me to compare my life to, right? Like, if I don't actively go on Instagram, I won't know that so-and-so is married. I won't know that so-and-so is pregnant. I won't know that so-and-so just got a big job at this place. And now I'm not sitting back thinking, am I doing something wrong? Those questions don't appear in your mind. Maybe if you happen to run into somebody, yeah, sure. Or maybe if you have a conversation with a friend and you're like, they're doing these big things and I'm doing not that. maybe then those thoughts come up. But those thoughts are not supposed to arise every single day you get on the internet. That's not normal. It's not. And I get it. Normal is constantly shifting and changing. What the hell am I talking about? What is this podcast about? Girl, we're going to keep going. I get it. I get it that normal is constantly changing and shifting. Like, it's kind of like the same way, like, after the pandemic, people were like, oh, like, this is the new normal. Like, we're never not gonna be in this pandemic. Do you know what I mean? Like, unless unless COVID was just eradicated, it still exists. It's like, you know what I mean? Like people would always phrase it, this is the new normal, or we're trying to get back to normal. Nothing's ever gonna be normal again. Like, we used to walk around and just do, like, people just used to be really weird. Like, not like, people are still weird about germs and like being gross and disgusting and stuff, like in terms of like certain forms of hygiene or whatever. But like, like, there's hand sanitizer everywhere. Like, people got masks. Like, if you like walking somewhere, oh, can I get a mask? Like, they have that. That's an option. Like, there's never gonna be people who aren't walking around with masks on. Like, it's never gonna be just, oh, you just walking around and seeing nobody without a mask again. It's not going away. It's not. And I don't think that it should. At the same time, where was I going? Hold on. I was talking about the mask, and then I was talking about hygiene, which actually leads me to my next point. But actually, I was supposed to be talking about Dune. But Dune's so interesting. I really enjoy it. I feel like I need to be fully immersed in something. And then I was talking about the internet. Yeah, and what I'm doing on here, and I'm like, this is so great, which this always gets. I feel like I talk about this all the time, but it's really just because I need help. Like, there's something not clicking mentally, not clicking, but like, this is like a really hard conversation that I'm struggling to conceptualize for myself, right? Of like, again, I said this last week. This is a very pivotal point in my life right now where I feel like I can either stop doing internet stuff altogether, or I have to just go full send, right? And then I go and I see people on the internet, like YouTubers or whatever, and they talk about how they hate the internet and that people are so mean and the comments are bad and all this stuff. And it's like, I'm seeing the comments are bad. I'm seeing the way people act. I'm seeing the way people communicate and disrespect people that they don't know. And it's like, do I really want to keep doing that? At the same time, I really like creating content. Much to think about. Anyways, the stressors of life that I was talking about. Actually, let's go back to the Zendaya thing for a second. I really think that she's actually quite a good actress, which leads me back to the Dakota Johnson thing. I enjoyed her in this movie. I thought she did a great job. And really what I liked about the movie was that, if you haven't seen it yet, skip ahead to the next chapter. But what I really liked about this movie was that, coming out is such a difficult thing. And I feel like it's really important to platform that experience. But not only that like, there are different versions of that experience. And I thought this was really nice to see, like, a 32-year-old character kind of going through the things that happen in life. Like, oh, your friend is leaving and things are changing. And it really kind of tests the boundary of friends in proximity. Like, a lot of my friends that I grew up with, I don't talk to anymore. And I doubt that I would want to talk to anymore. And that's no shade to them. It's just that, like, I feel like once you get older, the guidelines and criteria for your friends changes, right? So like, when you're like in elementary school, middle school, high school, it's a lot, like, a large part of your friend group is proximity. Like, yeah, you're not only friends with the people who live the nearest to you, but you're friends with people that you go to school with, that you see every single day. And then when you don't have those things tying you to them anymore, it's like, what makes you a friend to me? Do we agree? And then it becomes more of like, do we agree with the same things? Do you see the world the way I see it? Are you capable of taking in my version of the world and accepting that? Am I capable of accepting your version of the world? And it also becomes like a deeper conversation of, like, like morals and stuff, which when I was growing up wasn't a huge deal to me because I knew a lot of people didn't agree with those things. Like, I went to a predominantly white school. I lived in a predominantly white area. So naturally, I know that having a conversation about who knows what, like it could be any topic. It could be about gun control, let's say. If I sit here and have a conversation about gun control, I know that you're likely to not agree with my stance on it because of your lived experience of growing up around guns, growing up hunting, and maybe, and I'm not saying that if you do those things, that directly means that you wouldn't be against having more gun control in the country. However, in a southern area where I live, typically those are the premises that lead to the conclusion that you would not see a need for gun control because your lived experience with guns has, for the most part, relatively been positive, right? So that's going on. And so, anyways, back to the friend thing. When you think about stuff like that, I think when you go to college, and that's what's so interesting, or even like not go to college, but like when you just, graduate high school, because I know not everybody goes to college. But like when you get to those points of like your late teenage years into like, early adulthood of like early 20s, mid 20s, those are the times when you do really start to question and ask yourself, what am I really looking for? And do the things around me and do the people around me align with those beliefs? And when you ask yourself those questions, that leads to you learning more about yourself, which people always talk about college like that. Like, college is really a time to learn about you and all that stuff, da 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 da, which is so true. I think college is great for that aspect of life, yes. I really enjoy like learning and education. And for me, college was a time for me to decide whether or not, or like really for me to decide what was important to me, and understanding that once I chose what was important to me, what sometimes I would have to give up for those things, right? So in this instance, or during my time in college, pandemic, so now the conversation and ideologies are shifting from, oh, it's more than just about, do I have fun with my friends? Now it's about, do my friends understand my experience, or are they willing to be understanding of my experience? Like, going to college is very important to me because I needed Black friends. I needed people who understood what I was going through. And not to say that I only have Black friends, because I don't. I have white friends as well. But I have white friends that want to hear about my experience, and we want to grow and learn together, and they recognize the privilege that they have. And so that leads me to this other thing where, like when you go on social media and people will be in the comments, like, it's not even that people will be in the comments. It's more like people record videos of themselves, like talking to their friends or something about like social issues or like, like serious matters. And then there's somebody in the comment section who's like, you must be fun at parties. You guys, you people only talk about wokeness with your friends. Like you guys are losers and lame. And like people will really belittle you for being able to have more, like, to people really belittle other people for being able to have conversations with their friends about everything. And I don't know why that is. I don't, like, in my mind, that says more about you than it does about me, right? So I'm sitting there, and me and my friends went out on Friday night, and we went to a bar, and then we went to like this club, which is, yeah, there's a bar in the club. I don't really know how you decipher the things. I feel club is more like there's a dance floor, and then, there's a bar, of course, but like dance floor. Heavily, like, there's a dance floor here. And then bar is like, there's a pool table, and there's a bar, and there's tables, and it's dimly lit, and there was a dance floor, yes, and a photo booth, actually. I took some cute pictures that are over there. Anyways, that's besides the point. But it's that's besides the point. Back to what I was saying. We went out, and so, like, we're like drinking, like hanging out. We get in the Uber, and in the Uber we are talking about a bunch of things. Like, we're talking about you know, regular stuff that 20-year-olds talk about. And then we start talking about, like words in English, right? So we were talking about, I brought something up, or somebody else brought something up, and we started talking about how the R word is really like, we don't understand people using it as like something to be used as an insult, right? And so we started talking about that, but then we also started talking about the way that people use the word. And then we started talking about, because I brought up how a lot of cuss words have like hard consonant sounds, right? So like if you're thinking about the word, and this is just strictly educational, right? If we're thinking about the word shit, that's like a hard sound, right? It's a hard consonant sound. We're thinking about fuck. That's a hard consonant sound. Like all of these words sound sharp. If we're talking about bitch, all of these words sound very sharp in the English language. And my friend was like, but that's what makes it fun. That's what makes it seem fun for people to use them, right? And so we're sitting there having a conversation about semantics and really low-key social issues, because we're talking about people using terms so loosely and everything. And I was really sitting there, and then like later on we ended up talking. I think that conversation started with us talking about Billie Eilish's new album, which is actually very good. So if you haven't heard that, girl, turn it up. I'm not even a Billie not a couple weeks ago I made a TikTok where I was like, oh, I'm a Billie Bopper now. Like I really like this Billie Eilish album. Like this is good. This is good. I'm a Billie Bopper. And so I was about to say we were talking about Billie Boppers, but that was anyways besides the point. We started talking about Billie Eilish album, and then on the walk to the Uber and getting in the Uber and then riding for a couple minutes, like we ended up talking about that semantics words, and that led to, social issues conversations. And I was really sitting in the back like, I can't imagine not having these conversations with my friends. Like I can't imagine a world where I am not allowed to talk about the things that pop into my mind randomly while we're having conversations. Like when I'm thinking about people talking about, oh, you guys be fun at parties, you guys are so woke and it's boring and lame or whatever. I would hate having friends where I had to, and I've had friends like this and I did not enjoy it. I don't enjoy having friends where I have to censor myself, like where I have to stop and think, oh, I shouldn't say that because that would lead to a conversation about this, and then we'd have an argument about that, and then that would lead to something like this, and then we would have a difference because we have a difference of opinion on that. And that's too much. That's simply too much. And again, I think that says more about other people than it does about someone and their friends. If I can have conversations with my friends about social issues because we agree on those things, and sometimes we don't agree on those certain things. Like maybe we don't agree on how something's being handled. Maybe we disagree about where we stand on something. It's like, I don't think that there's anything wrong with that. I think that there's more so something wrong with friendships where you can't openly say things and disagree and not be able to have the conversation that follows that disagreement, right? And that's more so the problem. I ended up seeing a TikTok. I'm going to link it in the description. And this girl was talking about how conversations are so important and are typically the reasons not actually, she ended up talking about how a lot of things in this country have only changed because I think she was talking about how it's monetarily beneficial for changes to be made more so than it's the right thing to do. And I thought that was really cool conversation. So I commented and I got a lot of likes on my little comment, you know what I'm saying? But for me, what I try to promote on my platforms is having conversations, because not to go like Martin Luther King on it, I feel like there are times for violent protests and there are times for peaceful protests and there are times for conversations. And I feel like right now, everything is just people yelling at each other. And so I would like for there to be conversations in the world at the same time that it would be really cool to have conversations in this world. A lot of people are not equipped to have conversations. A lot of people don't, like, everything is only about being right and yelling their point and not listening to the other side. which is how I've grown up, listening to a lot of other people's sides and then them never listening to mine, which is hard. At the same time, it's something that you're taught growing up has to be accepted because that's just how the world is. And I have conversations with my dad about this a lot, about things that are going on in terms of like race and women's rights and stuff. And we'll have conversations about them. And he's like, yeah, I totally get what you're saying. And, but this is just the world we live in, the country we live in. And I hate that. I hate that that's like always going to be the response because it's the truth. Like, and I think that sometimes that's what being optimistic the way that I am, and that's what gets tiring about it, is because I know and have grown up with people telling me that this is just the way that the world is, and you just have to hope and pray that eventually like things are going to be okay. But and then you encounter people who are kind of like, it's not up to you to, or it's not up to us to fix the problems that are in this world. And it's so difficult to have those conversations because it is like, yeah, it's not my responsibility to change people's hearts or their minds or whatever. At the same time, it's kind of like, well, what happens if nobody ever tries to do that again? I'm not going to say that it doesn't ever work. At the same time, maybe it doesn't work often, but imagine nobody ever tries to change anybody else's heart about something again. Like there have been, I can't really remember, like, because that would be arrogant to say, and I'm not going to say that. What I was going to say, to be completely transparent, was that I can't remember the last time I felt like I stood on the wrong side of something. I'm sure that I have. I know that I have because I'm always learning new things. So, in those new things that I learn, you can come to the conclusion that when you learn new things, it changes your perspective on other things and changes your mind about something. But I've never really, like, when it comes down to like really cold-hearted beliefs, I don't think that I've not recently have changed my mind about something, because typically when I decide on my opinion of something, it's after hearing different views of some of a thing, right? So like when I've talked about abortion on this channel and it got a lot of pushback, I've heard what people, and I've done papers. And here's the thing that I was going to say. People like to think, or like, I don't know what it is that, like, people like to think that people aren't like educated on the stuff that they're saying, right? So they're like, oh, I'm gonna need you to provide your sources and you need to give me receipts on that. Why do I need to give you receipts on that? You can go look it up yourself the same way that I went and looked it up for myself. Like, there's a certain level of like, I will help you understand the point, but I'm also, it's not my responsibility to send you the link to the point. That's not, like, because what do you get from that at that point? And that's really what the problem is with the education system. And really everything I talk about is just a loop. You know what I'm saying? Just a loop every week. That's the problem with the education system. People don't know how to go find stuff on their own. Like, if you don't know how to research something, I don't know what to tell you. Like, I'm not about to sit here and give you every single link and waste my time doing that. I know what the facts are. If you don't know what the facts are, that's your problem. That's not mine. Anyways, when I'm talking about abortion on this channel, or like anywhere really, it's always like people think that I don't know what I'm talking about, or like that I just pulling stuff out of my ass. And I find that strange. Like, I went to college, and really what I would do when I was in school, and if I go back to school, which I hope to do because I really want to go back to school and just take philosophy. I really enjoyed it. Like, I wasn't great at it, but I also feel like the pursuit of knowledge is really just working on things that you're not necessarily great at or excelling in, right? That's the way to learn, is to push the boundaries on that. So anyways, that's besides the point. If I ever get money again, or I never had money, so I don't know why I said money again. That was really crazy. But if I ever get money, I would go back to school and study philosophy because it's really interesting to me and I really enjoy it. And also, my philosophy courses really helped me be a better, like, debater, right? I was actually looking at this stuff from my notes from my last psychology course about virtue. And well, actually, it wasn't just about virtue, but this lesson was about virtue. And we were really digging into a lot of things like situationism and like character states and like really what that means, like not necessarily do you have free will, but like that, because that wasn't the conversation. It was like the next part of the conversation after that, or maybe this is the conversation that you have before, don't really know. But it was basically like there are certain behavioral traits and character states that people have and certain virtues. And it was kind of like, no, based on situationism, it would depend on the situation and the variables that you encounter in that situation. I hope you're following me, for you to make an action. Like, you can't, basically what I think what was being taught there was that you can't predetermine what you would do in a situation because you haven't experienced a situation, and every situation is different. Therefore, you can never really know how you would behave in that moment. And then the other side of that argument is that if you have certain predispositions, or if you have certain, I guess, like behavioral traits in a way, is that it's predictable. Like, you're capable of predicting how you would act in a situation. And that was just very interesting to me. And I actually forgot what the hell I was talking about. Oh, I remember. Those classes made it easier, or no, it makes it easier for me to debate people. However, what I'm finding is that being on the internet and debating people is so different than this. If I'm sitting here and creating a standard form argument, which I have written down because I was going to talk about something, and we might still, because there's still time. But here, I have a standard argument. Well, in a way, standard. It's not really like written in standard form, which would be an if then in the conclusion statement, right? But anyway, it would be like an if then therefore, or an if then whatever conclusionary, I don't even know if that's a word, conclusion statements, you could say. Anyways, this is the conclusion. Socrates is mortal, right? And this is how we would start our arguments in psychology. And typically, if you're writing something, this is how you have to set up your argument. You have to go and write your argument in standard form, which was really the thing that was beating my ass, because I was trying to think of it in terms of like when you're writing a paper, because I enjoy writing papers, but it's like you're writing the paper to prove your thesis, right? And then your thesis is obviously going to be your in a way, yeah, your conclusion. And then, you go and wrap it up. But this is like, I was trying to think of it like, and really this is how you're supposed to think of it, your conclusion and then what led you to that conclusion. But sometimes when you're breaking down like philosophy stuff, like it's really, at least for me, it's really hard to do that, because sometimes I won't even know like really what pieces of the art of the text I'm supposed to be pulling out for an argument. Like, yeah, I may understand the conclusion, but maybe I probably, and this is typically what happened, sometimes I wouldn't even understand like the text itself. I would get the conclusion, yeah, but I wouldn't necessarily understand how we got there, because there would be so many words. And really, this is going to be and I'm sure philosophy majors would not agree, but like there would be like a lot of filler in there that would get in between the points that led us to the conclusion. So I would just get lost in the sauce because a lot of philosophy is hence, therefore, blase, blase, blah. And it was just a bit much. Actually, let me see if there's a little, because he used to take, yeah, here's one. This was the conversation because we would have key questions, and this key question was, are character states of this sort actually explanatory? And the first bullet is traditional view presupposed. That's one of the words used to kick my ass. Yeah. Traditional view presupposed by virtue ethics, yes. So that's answering the questions, are character states actually explanatory? So can you explain character traits is basically what they're saying. Anyways, and the quote, or yeah, that's put out here is from Harmon. He said, since it is possible to explain our ordinary belief in character traits as derived from certain illustrations, we must conclude that there is no empirical basis for the existence of character traits, which then ends up leading to these two views, which is that empirical data shows situationist explanation on no girl. I'd be falling asleep sometime in class, so that's kind of, anyways, girl. The conclusion and the premise. So our premise one is all men are mortal, right? So all men die. Premise 2, which is, these are separate statements that are supposed to be leading you. Everything is supposed to lead you back here, right? All men are mortals is still supposed to lead you to, therefore Socrates is mortal, right? All men are mortal. Hard stop. Socrates is a man. Hard stop. So if all men are mortals and Socrates is a man, therefore Socrates is mortal. And it seems very simple when you break it down in that context, right? But when you have like an entire, like 25 pages of text and it's time to break it down, it's not quite that simple now. Anyways, I was in office hours heavily. But that's besides the point. I felt very challenged through that class, and I didn't love it in the moment. I did a little bit, but like I loved it in a way that like I just really like to be challenged. But I didn't love it in the way that I also struggle with being bad at things. So it was like a love-hate relationship. Anyways, doing that was really fun for me, and I really and that is why I enjoy having conversations with people or debating with people. But a lot of people are not capable of having debates. So it makes it very difficult to have those. And then also, like I said, I'm learning on the internet that a lot of people, these are logical conversations. The whole idea behind building arguments and philosophical texts is to be able to carry on and have logical conversations, valid conversation. Well, I don't really know if you can say that, but logical conversations. And so in a world where people refuse to see logic, you end up where we're at right now, which is very difficult to see and understand because, and I'm going to be like fully transparent, which this might be like a controversial thing to say. Sometimes I struggle with the way that, well, not really, because I understand why, but what I was going to say is I struggle with understanding why there are a lot of white people who come off as, what is the word? Because the words I'm thinking are rude. A lot of people come off like like they lack comprehension to a certain extent and to a certain level. And a lot of times I think that's purposeful. I think that sometimes people will pretend to not understand something because they don't want to or they're not ready to. And that's what leads us to where we're at right now in society, especially when we're having conversations about race or really not having conversations about race, because people are so afraid to be wrong and people are so afraid to acknowledge their privilege that they just make it impossible to have conversations about race or talk about things that are important. And like, that's the thing that's actually holding us back. And the fact that people refuse to acknowledge that is really the problem. Because it's kind of like, if you would just sit back and like acknowledge it and we could have a discussion about it, maybe we could figure this thing out. And then it comes down to like a thing of like, I don't understand why people have a problem acknowledging their privilege. I acknowledge, like, I'm able-bodied. Like, I'm capable of, like, being able to go out into the world and be able to, like, there are challenges that come with not being able-bodied. Like, there are challenges that come with a lot of the privileges that I have. At the same time that I acknowledge that I have privilege, I also acknowledge that I'm not the most privileged person, right? I have a lot going against me in terms of intersections. However, I do acknowledge that there are some things that I do not struggle with. Like when it comes to class and stuff like that, like I've grown up middle class for most of my life, all of my life, really, for the most part. We were actually down bad struggling at one point, but we're not going to get into that right now. And so it's like I acknowledge those things and those experiences, but at the same time, I'm sitting here acknowledging those things. And a lot of it is that I really do believe a lot of people do know exactly what's going on in the world. They just don't want to acknowledge it, because if they did acknowledge it, that would be acknowledging their privilege. And, people don't want to do that. So we end up with this. But yeah, a lot of these philosophy classes have made me very great at debating. And I've just, it's just like really hard. Like it is complex to have that skill and then not really be able to like use it, because a lot of people, I'm not gonna say everybody, but a lot of people are incapable of understanding that. And then more so, a lot of people love to just poke holes and pull anything that they can to like support their argument. So like maybe I go and say something on the internet. Like the other day, what did I say? I was talking about, oh, girl. I was talking about this girl. I'm not going to say her name because I'm not doing that. But I was talking about this girl and the Olympics and stuff. And I ended up saying some stuff. Obviously, a lot of people got in the comment section and were like, you're wrong and everything's about viewership and all this stuff. And I was really in the comments like, y'all, I mean, and it's because like this is really what it comes down to. A lot of people will try and make conversations about something that it's not, to distract from the fact that people be right about what they said. And I don't get that. I don't understand that. Like, and at that point, I don't even, and it's gotten to the point where it's like, I'm not even going to comment. I'm not even going to respond to the comments, because I want to have conversations with people, but people never want to actually have conversations. They want to say what they want to say and then try to invalidate and poke holes in everything that you say. And it's like, I'm not doing that to you. So what's the point of you doing that to me? But again, that comes down to privilege and everybody wanting to be right about things, because people hate the idea of being wrong. And I even see that with like the kids that I was working with, of like, they're afraid to answer wrong. And I will give college this thing of teaching you that you don't have to be right. It's okay to be wrong. It's actually very normal to be wrong. And I don't know why people are so afraid of that. Like, people are so afraid to be wrong. Like, and I get it, because that used to be me. When I was in school, I was like, I don't want to answer the questions because I'm afraid the answer is going to be wrong. And then like sometimes you're not wrong. Like, but I get it though. And at the same time, if you don't go through certain experiences with that, of like overcoming that in your life, it doesn't have to be necessarily like you went to school and unlearned that. It could be you lived your life and unlearned that. You asked questions and you never really were in the habit of being afraid to ask questions or ask for help, or you were never afraid to be wrong. Those things, but a lot of people never unlearn that. And I feel bad for them, because I would tell those kids like, it's better for you to come and tell me, or I ask you a question and you get it wrong and I tell you why it's wrong and I explain the right answer, than it is for you to be wrong. Never like, and even like you learn from mistakes also. So like if you're wrong about something, you're going to remember you were wrong, and then you're going to remember what you learned in that moment. And it just, there's a comprehension issue. There's a literacy issue. There's a literacy crisis going on in this country. And it's not just with the kids. It's not just with the kids. Because a lot of people, again, I don't know if people that don't understand implied context, or it's that they don't want to understand implied context, but they don't. And then we end up in a world like this. And it's like, okay, well, girl, what are we going to do? Because it's actually looking quite bad, because these people who all they do is poke holes in other people's thoughts and opinions and arguments, they're raising kids. And I'm not going to say that all the kids turn out the same way as their parents, because I actually have a lot of friends that didn't turn out like their parents, or and stuff like that. Again, it comes down to like who you're around in your environment and stuff like that, and what I think you're willing to learn and open your mind to, and really low key what society says is somewhat best. Because I think in a way the reason that Gen Z is so the way that they are about being open about opinions, or gaining knowledge and speaking up for the things that they believe in, I feel like a lot of that comes into play because we've seen a lot of the things that our parents did wrong and the things that we have to deal with from them now. And so now it's like, how do we fix it? How do we correct the situation? And you end up with that, which I think is really interesting and cool. And at the same, and like, so now it's like, don't use or say these things because it's not societally acceptable, but those things weren't not societally acceptable until people spoke out and said, hey, doing that or saying that is wrong. And then we went and were like, yeah, doing that and saying that is wrong, and here's why, and we understand why. And now we go and make those changes in society, and I won't say shame people, but shame people into understanding why some of the things that they say or do are wrong. Yeah. And that's a whole thing. I can't believe we got there from talking about Zendaya. Oh, yeah, but I was also talking about my friends. And so that leads me back to that conversation. I'm so grateful that I have friends that are capable of having more than conversations just about regular, the word that 20-year-olds talk about, like boys or girls or whatever, and dating apps and all this stuff. Like, I think it makes me feel a lot better, because I feel like the way that we grow up and the way that we're conditioned growing up in families is like, people are always asking you, oh, what are you doing? Like, what's your job? Like, what are your career goals? Are you having kids? Are you dating? Are you getting married? What's going on? And so it's always about that. And so I think being able to remove yourself from those situations and have something outside of that, and having community outside of that, where things aren't about those things, but they're about, you know, not dating, but they're about conversations that you've had in school. Like, we're talking about social issues and the things that we believe in, and presidential candidates and elections. And at the same time, and in the same breath, and at the same, in 20 minutes after we have a conversation about that, we could be in the gas station giggling about a magazine cover we saw in US Weekly, or we could be giggling about a TikTok we saw, or we could be talking about a new album that just came out. I think that people, like, sometimes people like, and that's in, people can be really judgmental about a version of their life, about a version of life that they haven't experienced and haven't encountered. And in the same breath of me saying that, it's kind of hypocritical. It's kind of hypocritical there for me to say people experience things differently. People are a product of their experiences, but a lot of people's experiences, we can do better, right? I'm not going to sit here and say that just because people don't believe the things that I believe, they're wrong. However, if we can't have a conversation about the things that we differ on, I do think that's a problem. Because then it's like, how are we supposed to be able to learn and grow and for things to change if we never have those conversations, or we're too afraid to have those conversations? But anyways, another thing I wanted to talk about that's on my little list, and we'll get back to the movie thing later. Um, I watched this other movie that was called Miller's Girl. I'm sure everybody's heard of it. It was that Jenna Ortega movie. It's on Netflix right now if you want to watch it. But I watched it and it was good. And I was like, oh, interesting. I think what I learned from the movie, because I actually low key don't really know what I watched, I'm still stewing on it. But people can be very manipulative at any age of their life. That's one thing that I took from it for sure. Another thing I took is that I love a good movie. I think Jenna Ortega and like the roles that she's taking on has have been so interesting, and I'm kind of excited to see her where she's going, because I saw the fallout when it came out like during the pandemic, and I had never really seen anything that Jenna Ortega was in, so this was kind of like one of my first like experiences of like something I'd watch with her in it. And I was like, oh, like, okay, like this is a cool vibe. But then like seeing the contrast of that character that was very like high school teen relatable, and then seeing this character who's who's a teen in high school, yes, but it's like very different genre in general, like very different tone. Yeah, we'll say that, very different tone. And I think and really hope that she does well in this industry. Like I think she's really talented, and seeing her in these movies has been really cool. And me and Mary were actually just down at the Chili's the other week talking about wanting to write a movie. And I was just thinking about this like a couple of hours ago. And I was like, is it normal for people to want to write movies and stuff? Like, is that normal? Because like we were definitely having that conversation. Like, oh yeah, I definitely think about writing a movie and like hope to write a movie someday. And yes, like definitely something I want to do. Like I want to write a movie, like I want to write a book. Like I would love to do many things in my life. And then sometimes I'll go and ask other people what they want to do. And it's just really crazy that like people really want to do different things with their life. That's so crazy. Like there's so many options, right? Like my friend Xavier, he wants to be a vet, but not like a vet that's down at PetSmart, but like he wants to work on like big animals, like like big cats type vibe, like zoo type vibe stuff. And I think that's so cool. And like sometimes you encounter people who want to be marine biologists. Sometimes you encounter people who are chemists. You encounter people who want to cure cancer. You encounter people who, I don't know, want to make an Olympic swim team. Like people really have different dreams in their life. That is so crazy. Wow. But yeah, I watched that movie and I thought it was interesting. Yeah, interesting is the best word to describe that movie. And anyways, what I actually really find interesting and what I really wanted to talk about was the conversations that we have in society about writing and writers. And maybe this is a controversial take. Maybe this would get me beat up by the writers of the world, but I feel like sometimes the way that people talk about writing, they make it seem like it's this like extremely exclusive club that only certain people can be in, and that your writing has to be this like revolutionary thing. And as someone who enjoys writing or who thinks they enjoy writing, that's a difficult conversation, because I've read books about, like, actually when I was in high school, I read this book by Stephen King. He had this book, it was called On Writing, where he talked about writing and what it takes to be a writer and the toolkit and stuff like that. And I don't remember a ton about this book because I was kind of annoyed with the book. For this reason and this reason only, I feel like there's not only, and I'm pretty sure he said this in the book too, I don't really remember, there's no like right or wrong way to write. I think that people I think that some people like to make it seem like there's a right and wrong way to write because they want it to be this exclusive thing, which that's a whole conversation in itself, because it's kind of like, I understand like people wanting things to be exclusive. At the same time, so much of art is dependent on other people's art to inspire it. So it's like, if you only allow the best of the best writers to write, well, then what? Like, you know what I mean? Like, is there ever really, it's kind of like that conversation of like about success, right? So like there are moments when, and because I'm not a perfect person, and because I'm a regular person who has an ego at times, like, I'm not gonna lie, sometimes do I want to admit that? Yeah, because I gave the disclaimers already. Let's just go with it, just do it. Full send. Sometimes I get a little envious of other people's success in something that I want to do, because I want to do it and I haven't done it yet, or I haven't had the courage to do it yet, or I haven't seen the success in doing the thing yet. And it can be very hard, but at the same time, we're humans, so it's natural in a way to be envious. But here's the thing. I'm not envious, like, at least I hope I'm not, in the way that you think. Like, when I feel that way, I immediately remind myself, which is again another paradox type of thing. I try to remind myself that there's room for everyone to do what they want to do, to do what they love, and that it doesn't have to be a competition, because I feel like we're taught to believe it has to be a competition because of capitalism. I know people are thinking, you're just a woke brat. Well, yes. Well, yes. But when we're having conversations about that, it's interesting because when you think about it, the only reason that anybody ever feels the need to compete something, or the reason that they ever really feel envious, is because they think that somebody has something that they want. But then it also comes back to that conversation about, you don't know what people had to go through to get to where they're at. And so don't wish for their life, because you don't know what that actually looks like, because of people only put out the version of it that they want to be perceived for the most part. And that's a mind fuck anyways. But then, we have conversations about, and this is back to what I'm saying, which is the paradox part. It's like, it's not supposed to be competitive, and it shouldn't be competitive, but it feels that way because of capitalism. And then what you have to do to remind yourself that this is not a competition is like, I want everybody to win. Like, I want to see everybody eat, which is what I do want. But it's not what society tells you you're supposed to want. And so that leads to other things. But then it's like, I don't need to compete, because I'm my own person and everybody's unique. And that leads to the paradox conversation of, if everybody's unique, then nobody's special. And if nobody's special or unique, then everybody is just normal, which would reinforce the idea of, competition, capitalism, and run that whole loop back. And I don't really have an answer for that. I see it. I see the problem. Don't really know. Don't know how to fix that one yet. I don't know how to get that loop yet. But yeah. But writing is what I was talking about. I understand exclusivity because of that, right? Like, you want something to be exclusive so that other people are yearning to have that thing that you have, because exclusivity makes people feel unique and special. So if everybody's a writer, then what's different about my writing? What makes my writing better, right? And I feel like that's the conversation a little bit that I find interesting that people are always having in TV shows and movies. they make writing, which it is, like writing is a really great thing that I think that it's not everybody's skill set to be like a masterful writer. At the same time, I think it's a misstep to make writing seem like something that's this huge exclusive club that only the best of the best can get into. But that goes along with everything. Like anybody can write. It's a matter of if other people want to hear what you're writing, I guess, is more so the part that makes it exclusive, I guess. But then if you're not doing things for other people and you're doing it for you, then you don't really care about that. But then that reminds me of this thing that Ed Sheeran said in a podcast, which I didn't really listen to. I just saw the quote on Twitter. The video was there, but I didn't want to watch it. Actually, did I watch it? I don't really remember. Anyways, but he was kind of talking about how people are always talking about how they don't care about accolades or stuff when they're releasing their music. And he was like, that's just like bullshit, basically, because you wouldn't be releasing it to an audience if you didn't care about it doing well or care about the awards, which is fair. It is, but also at the same time, I think to a certain degree, you have to be doing stuff for you. Like, it's kind of like a thing of like, this is I don't really know what example I want to use because anything could like have a hole poked in it. But it's kind of like, oh, I make this podcast. Yes, I'm happy with the results every week, regardless. At least that's what I tell myself. My mind, it enjoys the dopamine and the feeling that I get when I see other people are enjoying my content too. Right? So like if I go on YouTube and I posted my podcast last week, I didn't promote it because I didn't think that it was promote worthy. So I didn't, but when I saw that it only had X amount of views, I was like, damn, that was bad. It wasn't bad. To me, it wasn't bad. Otherwise, I wouldn't have posted it. I don't post things that I don't think are good enough. However, because the numbers weren't associated with that, I saw it as my mind viewed it as failure, even though like if I'm sitting here thinking about it, I would talk myself out of that because this podcast is more of a passion project. It's not necessarily like I need 400 views every week of this podcast because I don't need that. But my brain wants it. I don't know how to make that make sense, but that goes back to the award thing of like, I put this out and I know that I put it out for me. It'd be really cool if other people enjoyed it too. And it'd be really cool if I got an award for it. But if I didn't, that's fine too. That's what I think people are saying. I don't think artists are necessarily saying that they don't want the awards. I think they're saying if they get the awards, that's really cool. If other people enjoy it and relate to it, that's really cool. But if they don't, I still put something out that I'm proud of. And at the end of the day, sometimes that's the thing that matters more than the external stuff that you get from it. Like if I sat down and I wrote like a really great paper that I'm proud of, yeah, whatever grade I get is the grade I get. And maybe I'll be pressed about the grade. Maybe I'll be happy about the grade. Maybe it'll validate me. But even if I don't get the grade that validates me, doesn't mean that what I put out or what I wrote wasn't good enough. It was good enough to me or I wouldn't have turned it in. You know? Don't know what this podcast is about. I really don't. Anyways, but back to what I was saying. Writers. I feel like and that's what I didn't love about the movie, or actually kind of what I enjoyed about the movie was that, it's really tough because I enjoy the writing style that's in that movie, or even like in a book like this, which I haven't finished yet, which I hope to start picking up because being on the internet is miserable. But like this book is written in a way that's like, it's written in a way that's, what do I want to say here? This book, A Brave New World, I forgot, people aren't watching this. This book, A Brave New World, is written in a way that feels like good writing, or like is what you're taught good writing is. It has a bunch of big words to explain the plot and explain what's going on and to describe the world. And to a certain extent, if this was written in boring, plain English that we talk in every single day, the book wouldn't hit the same. Like, there's a time and place for writing to be this super exclusive thing, and like the greatest of the greats create something like this. There's a time for that. But then there's also a time for people who write poems, who write books like Milk and Honey that some people may not love, but it has a very specific target audience, right? Like, there's a time and place for these things. And I feel like sometimes, like, this is a book you would read and is heralded in academic writing or in the academic world. Maybe even in an economic world or like a philosophical world, I don't know. But this is a book that many people read for that reason. However, like, if a random person just picked this book up, I don't know. I don't know. I don't know. It's kind of like 1984. Anybody can pick up 1984, which actually I need to take that book out of my backpack. Or did I? Oh, actually it's right here. A lot of people, when they read this book, 1984 by George Orwell, which I read in high school. Yeah, we read this book. And a lot of people who read this book talk about Brave New World. And so I was like rereading this book, and I was like, I kind of really want to know what people are talking about. So I got this book, which I haven't finished yet, and I need to finish. And hopefully I'll finish by the end of the week. That's the goal. Because if I come back on this podcast and I ain't read this damn book, it's Monday. I'll record this episode again, or this podcast again on Friday. If I come back and this damn book ain't read, somebody needs to clock me in the comments. Morgan, I'm talking to you because you're probably listening to this. Shout out to Morgan for watching the podcast, because last week she told me I looked like Tebow from iCarly because I was wearing a bandana. And I thought it was kind of anti, but I giggled a little, so happy I could provide her with a laugh. Anyways, but when we're talking about books like that, it's like I think that there is a time and place for writing to be this very like obscene but enjoyable thing, like where the reader and the audience feels like they just read something that's so prolific. And then there are times when books just need to be rewrites of Cinderella that I have over here. Cinderella is dead. Or sometimes there are times when you want a little bit of dystopian fiction that gives kind of like a societal overview of what's going on and what could happen if so-and-so does this. And there's times for that. And then there are times for books like The Alchemist that are about finding your purpose in life, that are simple enough for everyone to understand the meaning. Some people can look deeper if they feel that, but there's a time and place. And what I find interesting from this movie was the conversation that was being had about writers and the fear that comes with writing. And a lot of times I think that fear stems from of like people or writers feeling like their writing isn't going to be this big prolific thing, this huge success, because maybe a lot of people don't experience extreme success with their writing. And I think that that's okay though, because I think when it comes to art and like the humanities and stuff, a lot of times things aren't about like everything being so masterfully successful. If it is, that's really great. But I think that that's where like you enjoying the thing that you do comes into play. Like, I enjoy doing this. Maybe I'll promote this episode this week because I said a lot of things I felt like I cooked. I felt like I really cooked. There's a brain in here. There's a brain in here, guys. Anyways, but it's like we have these conversations about those things, and then I lost the train of thought. Damn. There's a brain in here, but sometimes it malfunctions. But yeah, I was talking about writing and that. But like I said, I enjoyed this podcast and doing this. At the same time, I enjoy TikTok and doing that. And people are going to disagree with me, and people aren't always going to agree with what I have to say. And people aren't always going to watch my content, which is fine. At the end of the day, am I okay with it? Yes. If it got an award, if it got a lot of views, that's really cool. If not, well, at least I put out something that I thought was quality. And like if I went back and watched it, which I typically do, go back and watch most of the things that I make, would I be proud of it? And the answer to that is yes. So that's what we have here. Anyways, I thought that was really interesting take on the movie because the movie was interesting. It was just like crazy. But anyways, the teacher in the movie ended up saying something that really resonated with me, which was what I was supposed to be talking about, which was that was the first thing, this is a quote, that was the first thing I'd ever written that felt tangible, like I touched something. And I really thought that was cool because I feel like a lot of times when people talk about writing and writers in general, they talk about this idea of like tapping into not a vessel. It's more so that they feel like a vessel and they're channeling something as they're writing or creating music, and which is why sometimes the experience feels like the song is already like made. You just have to find the pieces to put in it. And I watch a lot of music interviews, so that was just directly the thing that I understood. But I feel like everybody who's a writer, everybody who's an artist or something is chasing that feeling of feeling like they've touched something tangible. And I think that's really cool. Anyways, I was going to talk about some other stupid stuff. What was another thing I was going to talk about? Oh, I was going to talk about the conversation surrounding hygiene and stuff, but I guess I'll save that for next week because this actually ended up turning into something else completely, which I think is super cool. So, and I'm also going to talk about chip bags being empty, but because that was like a very clippable thing for me to say, but I'm going to stop here, which is super fun. But I hope you guys enjoyed this episode. I really enjoyed this one because it was just stream of consciousness. And you guys know I love a stream of consciousness episode just because it's fun and I like to see where my mind is going with things. Maybe I'll be able to put something together about something that I learned in my philosophy class for next week because this was actually like really fun. I was actually going to create like a conclusion and like I was going to talk about some of the things. I don't remember what I was going to talk about specifically, but I was going to talk about stuff and then put it into standard form, and it was going to be fun for me. It didn't really matter if it was going to be fun to watch. So anyways, but what I did find, I'm always, something about life is that you're just always taking care of yourself. And I was looking at my notes in preparation for this episode and I opened it and I found this sticky note and it says, if you're not a viewer of the podcast, like an actual viewer, you're a listener, it says, it's okay to not understand everything. Just try your best. You're smart enough to be in this class. And it made me think about how, to me, it's raining. Anyways, it made me think about how a lot of being an adult and a lot of getting older is just about you constantly reminding yourself that you're meant to be here and that you're meant to be doing the stuff that you're doing and that you're good enough to be doing them and like not questioning that. And there are a lot of people in life who have mastered that and don't have to remind themselves sometimes that they're good enough to be where they're at. But also that's not a privilege that everybody, has access to, or it's not how everybody grows up. And I personally did not used to be a confident person. Like I had very low self-esteem, which was unfortunate. However, like I've said before, I had like really great people around me and really amazing teachers who believed in me and saw something in me that, they helped me when I couldn't. Like they saw something in me and helped me see something in me when I couldn't see it in myself. And I'm very appreciative of those people in my life. And I let them know that. So yeah, if you ever are just questioning that about yourself, remind yourself and do all the things. I actually have a wall where I've talked about this before, but I have like sticky notes all around my like wall over here. So like this one is like these one's like relax and don't think because I'm an overthinker and sometimes I have to remind myself of that. And then like I just put like my favorite quotes on there. So like this one, when you're an underdog, you have to take what's yours, and like even like stuff like this. Some of these are like bent because I have this, what do you call it? I have this I have this a humidifier, and I'll also like turn the fan on because it's hot upstairs in my house. And so I'll like need the fan turning, and then the humidifier, like the steam will like blow towards the wall, and then it'll fold the sticky notes out. Anyways, that's the point. Thanks for listening if you did. I was also going to talk about something else, and I'm just going to add this in really quick because like we have time. Like I had downloaded or like re-downloaded Hinge the other day, and I immediately deleted it back off my phone because I was like, what are we really doing here? Like sometimes I go on the apps and I'm like, I just might die alone. And that's okay. You know what I mean? And that's okay. Like, that's okay. Like, I don't like necessarily know if I believe that 100%. I think that I'm believing the words that I'm saying like 58%. But the longer I'm going without that in my life, it's kind of like, I could do without that. I could be okay. If it came to that, I could be okay with that. A lot to unpack. And what's crazy is I'm going to go and clip this for TikTok to promote this episode. And then people are going to be in the comments like, you're ugly. And this is why you'll never experience love. And this. And then there's power in knowing that conversation is going to happen and those comments are going to come. So like it doesn't hurt, right? Think. Anyways, thank you guys so much for listening to this week's episode of the podcast. I really appreciate it. I really enjoy this podcast. It's so fun. Like not every episode is like gonna be a hit. And these episodes have been late. But I'm gonna be super transparent. I think I might change the day for when I post these for right now while I'm jobless, because recording a basketball podcast that's like so information filled and like needing to edit it, I've found is very strenuous, and I want this podcast to be good. So it's like, I don't want to like be spending my day doing that. And then later on that night, I come on here and try to come up with something to talk about and muster up the energy to give you guys like 60% when I could give you 100. So I think I might change these just because nobody's really watching them anyways. So like if I change the date, it's not really gonna matter, right? So maybe let's shoot for Mondays, or this probably is gonna go up. Yeah, probably gonna go up late Monday because I have to wait for this video to sync, and it's like it's an hour and a half, so it's gonna take a minute, and I'm probably gonna sleep for a lot of the days. I'm probably not gonna get until like late Monday night, early Tuesday. Regardless, if you did listen, like I said, I appreciate you. And I guess I'm gonna catch you guys next week or at the end of this week. We'll see what happens. Okay, just if you follow me on social media, you'll know when I post the new episode. Got your tea. Okay, I'm gonna go for real this time. But I actually need to unlock my computer, so I'm just gonna yap a little bit more while we wait for that. Okay, now I'm ready. I'll see you guys next week. Bye.